He was the man who danced into America's heart, who could melt a room with a look, and who made millions believe in love, even in the afterlife. But what the cameras never showed was the quiet storm Patrick Swayze was battling behind his eyes, long before the world had a clue. What do you do when your body betrays you, but your spirit refuses to quit? That was the question Patrick faced every day as his life began unraveling in slow motion. In the golden age of his fame, there was no hint of what was coming. Long before doctors uttered the phrase that would shatter his reality, Patrick was Hollywood royalty. Not because he chased fame, but because he made it feel effortless. Raised in Houston, born to a choreographer and a rodeo cowboy, he was the perfect contradiction. Polished, yet raw. Graceful, yet grounded. Even as a teenager, people knew there was something different about him. He didn't fit a mold. He moved with the elegance of someone trained in ballet, yet carried the swagger of a man raised on Southern grit. That blend made him magnetic. When Dirty Dancing premiered in 1987, nobody expected much. It was a low-budget project, a summer gamble, but Patrick's portrayal of Johnny Castle didn't just land, it exploded. Suddenly everyone wanted to be lifted in a lake, and Patrick became a symbol of raw charisma. But he wasn't content being a teen heartthrob. With Ghost, he showed the world he had layers: pain, control, restraint. That film didn't just succeed. It redefined what a leading man could be. He followed it with roles that pushed him even further. From surfing outlaws in Point Break to emotionally tortured characters in City of Joy, he gave each role his full weight. He did his own stunts. He trained like a fighter. He never leaned on fame. That discipline, that refusal to coast, made what came next all the more cruel. Because when the storm hit, it didn't come with headlines or a scandal. It came in whispers. At first just discomfort, a dull ache he chalked up to stress or overexertion. But it didn't pass. It deepened. Lisa, his wife, and Rock urged him to see a doctor. Tests followed. Then more tests, and then the hammer dropped. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Not just serious, terminal. It had already spread to his liver. The odds weren't bad. They were almost non-existent. But instead of breaking down, Patrick leaned in. While most people would have collapsed under the weight of that news, he squared his shoulders and simply asked, "So, what do we do now?" That was the first sign. He wasn't going to let this thing write the ending. With Lisa beside him, they dove headfirst into treatment. Not to beat the disease, but to buy time. To fight for days, not decades. Anything mattered if it meant one more moment of life on his terms. At Stanford, he enrolled in an experimental drug trial. The drug, vatilinib, aimed to cut off the tumor's lifeline by blocking its blood supply. It wasn't approved, it wasn't guaranteed, but it was hope. And for Patrick, hope was fuel. He took every dose. He braved the nausea, the fatigue. When asked how he was doing, he grinned and replied, "I'm a miracle, dude." April brought unexpected news. His scans showed stability. The liver lesions weren't worse. The primary tumor hadn't spread. It wasn't victory, but it was something. Enough to dare to live again. And that's exactly what he did. That fall, he stunned everyone by signing on to star in a new series, The Beast, a gritty crime drama, demanding hours, physically grueling scenes. Everyone advised caution. But Patrick wasn't looking for easy. He was chasing fire. He worked 14 to 16-hour days, shooting 5 days a week. On weekends, he sat in a hospital chair, receiving chemo. No body doubles, no skipped lines, no special treatment. For Patrick, this wasn't about legacy or ego. It was about control, about refusing to be boxed in by a diagnosis. He needed to be useful, to feel alive. And acting, his first love, was the thread he held on to. But behind the applause, there was another reality unfolding. He was changing. His body was no longer under his command. His hair thinned, his movements slowed. He looked in the mirror and saw a man slipping away from the image he'd built with sweat and discipline. Still, he showed up every day. He applied his own makeup. He masked the nausea with tea. When producers suggested easing the schedule, he shut it down. "I'll let you know when I can't do it anymore," he told them. That moment never came. Not because he got better, but because he never gave the illness permission to take the stage. Sometimes he'd vanish between takes. Later, friends would realize he'd stepped away to recover, to steady himself, to regain control over a body constantly threatening to betray him. But when he came back, it was with that same smile, that same voice, that same fire in his eyes. There was one moment, though, subtle, quiet, missed by many, that captured everything. A look he gave just before a scene started, not to the director, not to the crew, but to the floor, as if grounding himself, as if reminding his soul this was still his stage. Even if his body was fading, he was still here. Still Patrick, still fighting. It was supposed to be just another quick break between takes, but what Patrick's friend saw that day inside his trailer told a story no script could ever write. Curled up in a corner, drenched in sweat, trembling, Patrick wasn't performing. He didn't want attention or sympathy. He just reached out a hand and whispered, "Stay." It wasn't fear. It wasn't surrender. It was human. And in that stillness, the man known for unshakable strength revealed something even more powerful: vulnerability. It was a moment that peeled away the image and let the raw truth breathe. Behind the camera, the illness had begun to stage its own takeover. Once the final episode aired and the noise of production faded, the silence made everything louder. By January 2009, the disease no longer lurked in shadows. A sudden bout of pneumonia forced Patrick into Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. For someone going through chemotherapy, it wasn't just a setback. It was a red flag waving in plain sight. He was no longer able to hide behind makeup or the buffer of good lighting. His face had changed. His frame had withered. And for the first time, the world saw the toll. Photographs snapped without mercy began circulating. Patrick, thinner than ever, eyes hollow, moving slowly with an oxygen tube visible. They were haunting. Headlines speculated. Fans whispered. But what the images failed to show was that even while fighting for air, Patrick was still planning, still hoping. "What's next?" he asked his doctors. "Always forward, always moving." The answer was brutal: a radical combination therapy involving Abraxane and GM-SAR, experimental, untested, and unforgiving. The side effects were intense. His hair, once part of his signature charisma, began falling out in clumps. He didn't complain, but the mirror reflected more than a battle. It reflected a transformation. He wore wigs in public, not for vanity, but for dignity. And still, he forced a smile. Forced normalcy. He rode horses when he could. He talked about future projects even as his body rebelled with every breath. But there was no escaping what was coming. Friends noticed the way his words slowed, the subtle confusion, the pauses, the distant looks. The disease had spread, not just in his body, but through every part of his being. His spirit was resilient, but his physical shell was losing ground. So he did something deeply personal. He left Hollywood behind. In April 2009, he returned to the ranch in California, a place of peace carved between rolling hills and wide skies. It wasn't giving up. It was going back to where life had always felt real. Patrick had always called it his sanctuary. There, among the horses and open fields, he wasn't a patient. He wasn't a celebrity. He was simply himself. But even this sacred ground couldn't turn the tide. The man who once moved with power and precision now struggled just to stand. Sometimes, instead of riding, he would lean on the fence and watch the horses graze. memory dancing in his eyes. Lisa became his anchor. She did everything: ran the ranch, cooked his meals, managed his medicine, and sat by his side through sleepless nights. But she never treated him like he was slipping. Her love didn't falter. Not once. Patrick, always one to protect others from discomfort, kept up appearances as long as he could. He greeted guests with charm, shared quiet jokes, and posed for photos when asked. But it was clear, he was fading. The press, always circling, seized their chance. Paparazzi camped near the ranch, waiting. Eventually they got what they came for: photos that showed the reality. Patrick walking slowly, skeletal and nearly unrecognizable. The headlines that followed? Heartless. But no tabloid could capture what happened behind closed doors. The whispered, "I love yous." The strength it took just to sit upright. The triumph of standing up without help. These moments didn't make headlines, but they made history in the hearts of those closest to him. Because by then, words weren't needed anymore. Love was felt in silence, in touch, in presence. Then came the turn no one wanted. Late August, his health dropped sharply. Fevers spiked. His heart raced. Blood tests brought a chilling diagnosis. His body was shutting down. Lisa rushed him back to Cedars-Sinai. But this time, there were no new treatments. Just truth. On September 9th, they were told the unthinkable. There was nothing more that could be done. That night, Patrick returned home for the last time. In a 2011 interview, Lisa would quietly share what those final days looked like. The air in the house was still. Morphine became a necessity. Not to save him, but to ease him. Lisa administered the medicine with care, guiding him through each hour. Patrick, always stubborn, resisted sedation. He wanted to stay awake, even in the pain. On September 11th, Lisa's brother and his wife visited. The house was hushed. Patrick was slipping, his eyes heavy. But in a rare moment of clarity, he looked at Lisa and whispered, "I love you." She leaned close. "I love you too." Those would be their final words to each other. Plain, simple, and more powerful than any speech. Over the next 48 hours, he faded. On the morning of September 14th, as Lisa sat beside him, Patrick took one last breath. Then, silence. Not the silence of loss, but of peace. He was gone, but not alone. And in the days that followed, that peace was shattered by rumors. The whispers began, stories accusing Lisa of controlling him, of withholding care, of rewriting the narrative. Anonymous voices, wild accusations. But those who truly knew, those who had been there, spoke louder. They defended her fiercely, reminding the world of what really mattered: love, loyalty, and truth. And for those who had seen it all unfold, there was never a doubt. Patrick didn't just die with dignity. He lived with it, until the very end. The truth behind Patrick's final months wasn't found in tabloid rumors or online noise. It was written in medical charts, caregiver logs, and the steady hands that never let go. When independent specialists like Dr. Richard Hunter reviewed his full records, a different picture emerged, one that silenced the noise. Every flare-up, every shift in pain was answered with swift, expert care. Dr. Hunter, who had direct access to Patrick's medical documentation, concluded there was no sign, none, of neglect. In fact, he went a step further. Patrick's incredible 20-month battle with an illness that usually claims lives in under 6 was, in his professional opinion, only possible because of Lisa. This wasn't just caregiving. This was devotion carved into every minute of every day. And yet, in the echo chamber of celebrity loss, silence is often overshadowed by scandal. But real witnesses, nurses, family, even Patrick's closest colleagues, spoke with one voice. This was a love story, not a mystery. Behind closed doors, Lisa wasn't playing the role of wife. She became a one-woman fortress. She prepared every meal, charted every dose, chased down appointments, and spent sleepless nights tracking every breath. As one friend said, Lisa didn't let go. Not once. But in the court of public opinion, grief often gets cross-examined. That's when the whispers began. But the people who mattered most, the ones who saw everything, never wavered. They called Lisa his lifeline. And Patrick? He defied the odds because he chose to keep showing up. Even his doctors were stunned. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, already spread to the liver. That's the kind of diagnosis where timelines shrink to weeks, maybe a few months. Patrick made it nearly 2 years. Why? It wasn't magic. It was a triad of fight, fortune, and faith. Physically, he had a dancer's precision and an athlete's resilience. Decades of training had left him with a strong heart and the grit to endure treatments that would cripple most. He didn't just survive rounds of chemo, he rebounded from them. He ran errands, showed up to work, kept living. But strength alone isn't enough. Not with cancer this brutal. What gave Patrick a second wind was access to world-class medical artillery. Stanford's oncology research team brought him into a trial for vatilanib early, with doctors tailoring treatments in real time. He had specialists on call, cutting-edge therapies unavailable to most, and access to combinations like GMSAR and Absane that extended his options. But there was still something else. His mind. He never identified as terminal. He refused that word. Instead, he declared himself a miracle. And that mindset reshaped every room he entered. Even nurses said it. He should have been gone months ago, but he kept choosing to live. That kind of willpower is rare and contagious. Patrick's story wasn't just in the spotlight. It was in the shadows too. Before the fame, before the world knew his name, he was a kid from Texas with big dreams and a mother who drilled discipline into his soul. That quiet grit stayed with him, even during the lowest moments. He faced addiction in the 90s, not with headlines, but with humility. He walked into rehab without a PR team, admitted when he stumbled, and kept moving forward. So now it's your turn. Who do you remember? Which character's disappearance still bugs you today? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. We read them all. Don't forget to like this video if you had a nostalgic blast, and hit that subscribe button so you're always looped in when we dig up more hidden Hollywood gems. Oh, and smash that notification bell. Trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming next.